put my timer here so I know. Don't take too long. How's everyone doing? Second graders here, 3 more months. And thanks for asking me to present the third year fellows of this year. That's April Fool's. All right. You didn't flinch. I thought you were going to be like, what? I'm going to start with some works that I actually made here at the Academy. This was 2006, and I had gone to SVA and then New York Academy of Art first year. And during this time, I basically had come from a background of doing graffiti art in San Francisco. So I kind of started school late. And when I came to school, I was really hungry to learn. I was even sitting in like extra classes here. I remember Wade yelling at some students saying, "This guy's not even in my class and he does the homework." And you know, I all these years that I went to SVA and the first year of New York Academy, I basically just wanted to learn. So I wasn't really doing any of the work that I wanted to do. I just wanted to like understand. And because I had got all my rebellious stuff out of the way when I was doing graffiti art and not going to art school. And I remember first year, we, through New York Academy, we went to Normandy. There was like a award that you would get to go to Normandy for a couple of weeks and stay at this chateau, and all you had to do was, you know, go out and make paintings and then come back and drink wine till whenever, which was great. And one of the things that happened, though, was there was a lot of art historians, but historians there, and we went to the D-Day site. And when we were at the D-Day site, I started to have these sort of memories of the place. I know I hadn't been there, but it just looked so familiar. And that sort of took me back to, you know, I grew up in Iran, lived through revolution and 8 years of war. So I started to sort of remember these things that I've experienced as a kid. Most of them were sounds of vibration and explosions and air raids. And I started to think, yeah, I experienced these things. I'm going to try to remember it, you know? So it became about sound. It became about memory. And the most important thing that happened was I started to make these, well, let's see, I'll go to this. When we came back, I started to make these charcoal drawings in the studio here. And one of the most important things about them was that they didn't look real, but they felt real. And this was a turning point for me because it was so important that a work of art could sort of like go inside of your body and make you feel something as opposed to just to your head. So then I made this painting after I made a series of those charcoal drawings that were based on sounds. And again, this was based on something I actually experienced, which was a bomb was dropped in the yard of my school, and the next day when we went to the school, it had left this giant crater. So you see a little figure there who's like looking at this giant crater in the ground. And so this just started to kind of happen. Like I didn't really plan this painting. Things just started to appear as I started to paint. And this was really exciting for me. So then I made these you know, these sort of like ink drawings that I was looking at Goya, and I was thinking about Disaster or War series and so on. And this just was super exciting because then this was leading up to doing my diploma project, which I know I've said this before, but I still have a folder called DP. And all my paintings that I've organized since 2006 until now is under this folder called Diploma Project. So these were the paintings. I think this one is 2007. So maybe I should go to this first to say that I made this painting. This was my first diploma project, and I secretly made this painting in my home studio at the time because, and here's a detail. The school, I mean, I know it's still a very figurative school, but back then it was more of a figurative school. This was not allowed in my mind. So, but I was so excited after, kind of discovering this thing about things feeling real, that I made this painting for 2 months or something, 2-3 months in my studio, in my home studio, and I brought it to school, and I thought I was going to get expelled or yelled at. I mean, I didn't know what to expect because it was the first time I was making something that is what I wanted to say, And there was a really great teacher here named Martha Erlbacher, who I learned so much from. And I absolutely thought like she would just, not be my friend anymore. But it was the opposite, actually. So, and the school gave me a fellowship, third-year fellowship, so thanks for that. And I started to make these kind of works in the studio. So this was 2007. This was the second work that I made, which was kind of follow-up of the diploma project. And actually, some of these works are now in my Katona Museum show, which I hadn't seen for like almost 20 years. So it was really great to see them. Here's another one. So all these were made here in 2007. Here's a detail of this painting here. And this painting kind of reminds me of one of my first experiences as a kid. People always ask me, when you lived in Iran, what was the visual art that was around? And I don't remember any visual stuff that was around that I could recall. For some reason, I do remember a Giorgione painting hanging in our house, but everybody tells me I'm wrong, but I don't know. Anyway, when I was like about 8, we took a European trip with my parents. One of the places we went to was Rome, and we went to see the Michelangelo Sistine Chapel. And when I saw this work, something happened to me that it's unexplainable, but I basically kind of froze, and I was not there at the time. I was somewhere else. And, my mom was trying to get me to leave. I couldn't hear her. I couldn't hear the guys yelling in Italian to like leave. You have a certain amount of time. And I felt like, reflecting back on it, I kind of feel like the thing that happened to me is what I understood art is capable of doing. It's not about what you project into the art, but sometimes the art could get a hold of you and it needs you for something, or it could enter your body somehow and your mind and stay there. And I feel like that painting was a powerful moment in my life to, as a kid, to experience something like that and carry it on, you know, all these years. Here's a small painting I also made here, which it was my idea of Velasquez spinners, but this is like the aftermath, you know? And in some ways, I guess I was thinking about, you know, spinners, they're these women who are crafting, creating something, but now they're not needed anymore and their place is in ruins, which kind of, you know, it always points back to what a painter does, right? It's a dinosaur old tradition that we're still sort of carrying on and trying to make sense out of it. So there's always, in my work, there's always this reference to that as well. And here in 2008, I started to sort of think about bringing in geometric shapes into my work, and also thinking about, this is the first time that maybe I mean, a lot of my work has elements of world landscape, which you have a middle ground, foreground, background, but in this case, this is more like it's more like a stage maybe. And this is something that also like continued to this day, and I kind of went back to it, but you could see all these different figures. So there's a lot of figures in my work, so I'm a figurative painter. And here's another one. I mean, there's so many details in this work. I mean, from this, you probably can't see anything, but you could see here that and you know, another thing that's really interesting to me was the idea of catching these moments that are in between and things that we can't quite grasp, like when you turn your head or in your memory, your dreams, hallucinations, all these things, they're ungraspable. And when something is turning into something else, let's say a figure is turning into smoke, or when you look at a cloud and a cloud is turning into something that you see for a moment and you try to capture it and then it disappears. I caught myself thinking that this is something that I'm really interested in capturing all the time, and that's why my work is always in motion, where you have movement in the work. This work is, you know, I always say that my work is a combination of personal history, art history, and current events, and in some ways also like cosmological things. In this case, you know, you have these sort of colorful bars on the top of the painting as such. And for me, whenever I look at these, I mean, we don't have this problem anymore of test patterns or, you know, but back in the day when there was no program on TV, you would get these test patterns. But for me, when we wanted to, in Iran, when we wanted to, when there were air raids and you wanted to check that if you should run down to the basement for safety, you would turn on your TV and these color bars were on, but then there was a siren. And if you heard the siren, that means that you need to run down to the basement. So these color bars always had like I don't know, like an anxious fear kind of feeling for me. And I wanted to include it in this painting, which is called Prisoners of the Sun TV. And then in 2009, I started to think about wanting to have, you know, sort of like a color field painting, but at the same time build a sort of world on top of that. So I started to experiment with having these really like bold colors, a blue, a red, a green. And so when you stand in front of painting like a Rothko, you might get like this sort of like vibration or color coming through, but at the same time, like you had this sort of like world. So the colors are quite intense, actually. Like this blue is quite intense. And I made a series of work in 2009 that were playing around with this idea. Like this was like a dominant green, but in this case, I was also doing something else, which, I'm a huge fan of looking at engravings and etchings. I know this is very, you can't see the details here, but this was on panel, and I went into the board and I started to sort of scratch it as if it was as if it was an etching. So it was a way to sort of explore mark making of etching. And this was the first painting in 2011 that I always wanted to have a painting that had dominant gold color, but it always had failed because gold is, quite intense. In this case, it worked, and I was very happy with this. Sorry, there's no details here, but this is 2012, a painting called It's in the Air, and here's some details here. I started to, and as time goes by, you might start to notice that my figure started to grow larger and larger, like early on, the biggest figure was maybe like this, and now when we get towards the, 2024, 2025, I made a painting that the figures are 3 feet. So they kind of naturally grew with me in some ways. Here's a painting called We Haven't Landed on Earth Yet, which is a de Kooning quote, which I really liked. They were talking to de Kooning about, technology and man landing on the moon and so on. And he said, but we haven't even landed on Earth yet. Morally, meaning. So, but it's a very kind of like, to me, it has like a very sci-fi kind of feel to this painting. This was the first triptych painting that I made that was commissioned for a collateral at Venice Biennial. So it was the largest work I had made at the time, 96 by 180 inches. And then since then, I've made several triptychs as well. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions, don't feel free to. I don't mind if you want to ask anything. Okay, here, 2013, Aleph, I'm always thinking about technology and what it's doing to us. So in this case, and also, I gotta say, I have synesthesia, so I hear sounds from visual things, and in reverse, if I listen to good music, I also see visuals, and sometimes people's names, there's a color or taste, so it's all intertwined in some ways. So I wanted to, the upper part of this painting, I kept thinking I want to capture a digital sound that's interrupting the painting, And specifically, I was imagining like the AOL dial-up sound, which, because it just has like such a distinct sound, and it just sounds like disruption, and I wanted to capture that, so I started to experiment with different ideas of, okay, what would that sound like? So I started to make these paintings that had these sort of, I don't know, they're like kind of pixels or these digital interruptions that are like on the upper part of the work. Here's another one called Motherboard. Which, Motherboard refers to that specifically. And this is another element that, I always say my work is very encyclopedic, because in order for me to be satisfied with the painting, it has to contain all these different things that I'm thinking about. Like I do a lot of research that are parallel with me making the work. So the research that I do is like the fuel of my work. So as I go through all these different years, when I see the paintings, I could remember what I was reading, what I was thinking about, which artworks I was looking at, what was going on in my life, what was happening in our time, and so on. So each painting sort of contains all those things that I was researching. So the paintings, in some ways, end up being like the result of me grappling with these things and trying to understand them. This painting is called Contact. You could see the details of these figures. There's this figure here that's made out of fire. So, it's always interesting for me to try to capture things that are sort of, again, they're not tangible things, like how do you paint a figure that's made out of air or fire and so on. Here's another triptych with that series of, the digital sound. You can see the details here. A funny story about this painting is that I had a month to finish this painting, and I had moved into this new house, and there's still a mark here. I cut my hand on a light bulb, and I painted the rest with my left hand, which was a very interesting thing, because it's like a child, like I had to tell it, turn right, turn left, stop, where this one is trained and it just has the hand-eye coordination. But I don't know, some things happened that were different. Yes. Oh, yeah.
Why is so much of the action of your paintings in the lower third of the painting?
They were. It's changed. Yeah, I think they were at the beginning, because I was thinking about world landscape. I was always thinking, okay, you have to have the middle ground, foreground, background. You see, it's the thing you have to turn off. It was like, this is what I've learned over time, that when you're painting, I mean, at least for me, it's best when you turn off your thinking, the words in your head, because they limit you, So I was thinking that, so I was thinking, oh, I have to do this, because I don't know why. But slowly I let go of it. I think slowly, like now, you'll see, like now there's no rules or regulation. You could have a large figure on top, and you could have a small figure at the bottom. And so you got to tell yourself sometimes, like, why do I do this? Why is there a rule? But it takes time. So this is the biggest painting I've made. It's about 24 feet long, and this was in 2015. So this is the first time. You said it exactly at the right time, Peter, because this is exactly when I changed that. Because you could see here that even though everything's at the bottom, there's no like middle ground anymore. It's just the bottom. You have the figures. You see, you have the figures, and then you have the upper part. But that's why the painting is kind of like, it's not so high anymore, because I wanted to zoom in and concentrate on the figures. But also I was really thinking about, paintings I love that are like a frieze, like a Piero della Francesca or something, like, you know, like all these frescoes that were done that look like a frieze. And I kind of wanted to, I wanted to capture that. And this was another breaking point where, let's see, this idea of breaking up the space and stage, like a theatrical sort of stage, started to happen. I mean, it's actually reoccurring things anyway. I always see it as a spiral. Yeah.
Could you talk a bit about your process of creating
Yeah.
these works? Because I could be wrong, but it looks like it's like first time, first decision. But no, I'm sort of, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Totally. So the way the paintings start is, yeah, the figures you see in the paintings they always come way later. It's sort of like I go from a white canvas to like a total abstract sort of, like a giant Rorschach stain, let's say. And it's very, you know, that first beginning is very, it's a grisaille color, and there are these colors that I make myself, because these colors open up these worlds for me. I've learned over time. There's maybe like 4 or 5 of them, like a bluish color or brownish color or greenish color and so on. And yeah, at the beginning it looks like a totally like a action painting, you know? There's no figures, it's just fragments everywhere. It's sort of like an explosion, let's say. And then I start to kind of see possibilities within the fragmentations, and it becomes a slow dialogue, you see. It's sort of like, I want to say some things, the painting wants to say some things, we go back and forth. It's a slow process. But the exciting part for me is always that I have no idea what's going to happen. I don't know what is going to end up happening in the painting or what the painting is going to end up telling me. And I totally believe in this idea of, you know, having antennas and being able to pick things up in the air and materializing them. And the paintings allow me to do that because I've created something that then comes back and speaks to me, and then I say something, and then it says something, and so on. And every day that I come in, you know, something different happens. And I could see the painting through a different lens of strategy. Like one day I could think, what would Hiroshige do? Another day I could think, what would Velázquez do? Another day I could think, what would Picasso's Guernica? You know, so it's all these different ways of looking of how you could solve a problem. But also, like, I could go outside and go walk in the park and see something and be like, oh yeah, maybe I'll try that. It could work or it could not work. It's just always this way for me. So it's very, yep.
Yeah, I remember watching a Zoom that you did with Kenneth Brummel.
Oh yeah,
AGO.
yes. That was about Picasso blue period, right? Yeah.
And I remember you said something similar where you were talking about like Picasso's sort of process, how it implemented into your process. And do you think that still is like amongst the same driving force with like the current projects that you're doing right now?
You mean Picasso in general? Sure. Or I would say the Guernica for sure. That's something that I always think about because I see that painting as the painting is basically, you know, it's depicting universal human suffering throughout the ages, you know? And I mean, I think about that painting almost all the time because it just has so many different reference points to it. One is that I look at that painting and I'm like, I feel that painting, I experience that, I totally feel it. Another thing is that a lot of artists I like, you know, I've read this story that when the painting came to MoMA, Jackson Pollock, Lee Krasner, de Kooning, they were just in awe of that painting. And then you could see that they started making painting in the exact same ratio as that painting, which is what I did as well. Like I figured out the exact mathematics of the ratio, and I've made several paintings that you'll see since then. So I think there are certain works that are so powerful, and they live through time in such a way that you could, feed off of it forever in some ways, Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, yes, I mean, I have music playing sometimes, but it never affects the paintings because the notes of sounds that I hear comes from the painting itself. So it's like if I put down one thing, it's a note, and then it needs another note, and then it needs another note, and then it needs another note. I was watching this thing about Beethoven that somebody was playing the music, and it was saying, I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong, Wade, but it was saying that it was all about a response of what he put down. You had one note, what's the next note? What's the next note? What's the next note? And then next thing you know, you have like a whole composition, right? And I think it's similar for me. It's you put down one thing, and then what's the response to that? And then what's the response? And then what's the response? And on a good day, it just keeps going, On a bad day, you do a couple of things, and then you just have to, I don't know.
How long does it take, like the big painting that was 24 feet? How long did that take?
Like 2 to 3 months, I would say. And I work on one painting at a time, so there's just too much to do in one painting.
And do you mix the set colors for that particular painting at that time?
Yeah, I don't really have like a method. I always start a painting and then I'm like, how the hell do I do this? And I like that approach because it allows me to sort of go whichever direction. I don't mix it because I don't know what I'm gonna do. I mean, I do react to this sort of grisaille that I put there. That's one sure thing, that there's a mood, let's say, in the painting. But this was just a show I had. But yeah, I think each painting just sort of picks up where the last one was in some ways. It's like a step, like you learn something in one painting and then you apply it to the next painting, and then maybe 5 paintings later, you totally forgot how to do that thing, but you learn some other things. So it's like a transitional thing that you use the tools that are necessary for the time, but then you might not need them anymore. They might come back like 10 years later. You might say, oh yeah, I remember I did that. Maybe I'll need to use that for this part of the painting, and so on. Yes, so yeah,
I'm curious how you balance the individual figures versus how they all kind of collectively cross over together. Is that intentional, or does it just happen naturally?
So like how, like you mean the rhythm in the, or you mean?
So much specificity to certain figures that
Oh, okay, yeah.
but they also really speak to each
Yeah,
other, and you can see how they kind of layer maybe at the same time.
sure.
How do you approach that?
I think that goes back to the sound thing, because certain things need more attention, and then you sort of need space between them, and then the next thing, and so on. So it's sort of like I mean, you could see here that there's definitely like this compositional sort of thing happening, and then each figure is developed in a different way. So it's like, it's all about what do you fine tune more and what do you fine tune less in order for the whole thing to work. I mean, one good example is, this is something I've learned over time. There were several times where I was attached to one figure in the painting. I thought this is the best figure in the painting, and I kept thinking about this figure. But then something was off with the entire painting, and I've learned that you have to destroy that one figure in the painting that's taking all the, because that goes to my philosophy too, where I don't believe in heroic paintings. I don't believe in heroes and stories. I'm more of an anti-hero story guy, but I want everything to be as important. It's like a animistic way of thinking where you think plants, mountains, sky, figures, rocks, ground, everything is equally important. So therefore, I don't want to, have like the hero figure and the supporting actor and, you know what I mean? So on. I want everything to.
Earlier you showed the weavers. Do you, when you're doing these paintings, do you look at any references?
So I.
Like look at some inspiration simultaneously?
Yeah, so I always have two big tables in the studio, and one table ends up gathering images that the painting calls for. So my method is that whenever I start a new painting, that table gets cleared out, and then I start a new painting. And as I'm working on the painting itself will call on certain book that I should go grab to just look at. And it starts to kind of pile up, usually the same stuff, the Guernica and Velázquez and so on. So I have that table, and then I have another table where it's like my research table. So these things are the things that are like the fuel of the paintings. And I look at them again just to have these, it's kind of like you have friends in the studio, like you have remembering certain things, but I don't, it's not direct. If they do end up showing, it happens naturally without me like, quoting a figure from a painting. Maybe in that older work, I did quote it, but in these ones, they sort of like, I look for them. I kind of develop them as they speak to me in some ways. Of course, they end up being a combination of, certain things I have seen, of course, and referencing certain things for sure. See, you have the painter here. This is called The Rise of the Blonde, without an E. And it was 2016. There's the blonde. This is called Mosaic People. Again, it's going back to the technology thing where you have these figures that they're like sort of pixelated. They're turning into pixelation. This is the first painting I made that is in that it's sort of monochrome, and it just didn't want color. This is, if you want to imagine how a painting, like this is that grisaille that I was talking about, but then it kept going further and further. So I was using 4 or 5 different whites to develop the lights, and then I was using all these different darks to darken the darks. And again, it sort of allowed me to think about this painting in terms of using engraving sort of language. This is called We Work in Shadows.
Do you ever think of the figures as having costumes?
Yeah,
There's something about them that feels almost like Venetian 18th
yeah,
century bacchanal kind of thing.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think of them as I like them to be in this between stage of you as the viewer question that, is that a costume or is that who they are, which is what we do anyway with people.
How important is the title of the painting to you? Like, is it something that's preconceived, or is it something that comes after, or provides context to the viewer?
Yeah,
So just
totally. Yeah, no, that's a great question because I think about my titles a lot. And on one hand, the titles have to, all the things that I'm thinking about, as I was mentioning earlier, like current event things, personal history, art history, things I'm reading, all the titles have to be an umbrella to capture all those things. And also going back to the sound thing, it has a ring. Like if I'm reading a book, suddenly something in the book just like jumps out. And I know there's something about this I need to think about or record, you know? But usually the titles come either midway or towards the end of the painting. This is called The Game of Taming. There's the dinosaur painter. Yes.
Is there anything more you would say about how you like mentally approach organizing all these details in your
How do I organize the details?
Yeah, they're so detail oriented, but sometimes that can almost be over. I like to think very detail oriented too. Sometimes I get very lost in it.
Yeah.
Like, if you have any advice on like how to
Sure, yeah. Well, I would say that, you know, different days where I come in throughout the day, I have these different energy levels that could deal with the painting. Sometimes I could deal with the totality of the painting when I have a lot of energy, and then sometimes I'm more like a miniaturist and I'm working on a part of the painting. So it all has to do with like when I come in and I look at the painting, what part is asking me for help, you know? And then I kind of go with that in some ways. But that energy thing could change throughout the day, you know? So it's always different. This is a show I did in Vienna. It was a show with Hieronymus Bosch. It's funny because remember I was telling you that story about Michelangelo's when I was eight. The same thing happened to me. I don't know, maybe what year is this? Yeah, maybe in, I don't know, let's say 2010 or something. I went. It was my birthday. I was with my mom, and she said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to go." We were in Vienna. I want to go to Academy of Fine Arts. I want to see this Bosch painting. We went there, and I again froze in front of this painting, and she got mad, and she left. And I stayed there till they closed. And again, it was something was happening, you know? There were sounds, the time was not there. I don't know. Again, it happened, but then it turned out that, you know, a few years later, I had a show in that same room with that painting, which is pretty amazing for me. And, you know, they stayed in this room for like 6 months or something. So they had a conversation. Okay, and then yes, this 2018. Am I like going over time or something? Okay, I go fast. Small painting, small painting. Big painting. Yeah.
No, just more on your technique, because it looks like some places you have scratched the surface, or you use lines that's washed out. Is that, are you all these different effects? Just
Yeah.
fibers?
I mean, it's always like out of desperation, you know, like you're trying to make something work and it doesn't work, and then you try this, you try that, it fails, it works. So, you know, it's. Oh, they're all different. I mean, like this one, I don't know. What did I do here? No, I don't use sponge. It's just rags and brushes. Old brushes are the best. I love old brushes. They do things no other brush does. Let's see. I'm at slide 62. Shit, I'm like halfway. Okay. I'll just go and let's see. This painting is called SOS 2020. Okay, this is 2020. Remember that year? Things were happening. So this painting is the caravan, and you see here I have like a wheel on the caravan, but there's the legs of this figure who's sticking out. So basically the caravan is not moving because the legs are in the way, and I feel like everyone felt this, we're just stuck, you know? And that's a quote from Bruegel, actually. Triumph of Death.
Do you look at Ernst at all?
Oh, yeah.
He does a lot of the same.
Absolutely. I love Ernst. Yes. Not so much, but I like him, yeah. But Ernst more. Ernst definitely, I mean, in so many levels, I look at Ernst. He was hugely influenced by alchemy as well, so like I'm interested in his references as well. This painting is important for me because this painting, going back to Guernica, this painting is it has the composition of Guernica exactly, and it's the same ratio. And somehow the painting ended up becoming about the pandemic and the vaccine. So there's, I mean, without my intention, but somehow it happened where you have all these figures in the painting that have needles stuck in them. And then I was fascinated by researching, you know, the messenger, what was it called? The one that we all got? mRNA. I mean, I was fascinated by researching this thing. So there's all these symbols in the painting that has to do with that, because we were all getting ready to get the vaccine, and it was on our mind. So it somehow worked its way into the painting. Here's a painting called Beautiful Lies, which then influenced the show I did at Palazzo Vecchio in Florence. It had to do with Dante. So these 4 paintings were commissioned for, it was like Dante's, I don't know, 700-year anniversary or something. And yeah, I read three or 4 different translations of Dante's Inferno only. Never moved into Purgatorio, or I don't think I'll ever go to read Paradiso. But I have a friend, Mary Jo Bang. Do you guys know her? She's like a translator of all the Dante, Divine Comedy. And she told me, she's like, Ali, nobody ever reads Paradiso, and she's coming out with one now. But she wrote for the book, actually, this show I had. And then the other part of it was it was a 2-part show. This part was in Museo Bardini, where it was really interesting because I could work with the collection. So, you know, these are these antiquities that I was able to just like move around in order, you know, put my painting or like use a frame and so on. I was mad about this because I had told them to put my painting next to Tintoretto, but instead they took down the Tintoretto and put my painting up, which I didn't appreciate, but it was too late. This painting is called The Changing Past. This was inspired by seeing a lot of monuments being taken down, and just kind of send me down a rabbit hole of researching iconoclasticism and history of destruction of objects that held power or whatever. So I had a whole show in 2023 at Victoria Miro that this was sort of the theme, the changing past. Pyramids of the sun and the moon. Okay. Queen of the Night. I'm obsessed with this Queen of the Night that exists at the British Museum. It's an ancient Near Eastern figure that means so many things to me. Ancient Near Eastern art is something that I'm really, really interested in. But at the same time, this painting also was during a time of the woman life freedom. So it has something to do with that as well. So it's always this sort of combination of things. You could see there's so many symbols and things in here. This painting, I was researching the theme of freedom, and again, going back to ancient Near East, I led to a name that was called amagi, which is the first word for freedom, but the literal translation of it was return to mother, which I really loved. And this painting has a lot of symbols in here too. All these symbols that I had researched about freedom, researching the Statue of Liberty and where that came from and so on. And then it was hung in this Prince University Art Museum for a year. Here, Weighing of the Heart, influenced by ancient Egyptian art, but again, I went back to the earlier work I was showing, where back to bringing geometric elements into the work. In this case, the geometric elements are sort of working with the algorithm of the painting in some ways, and this is something that sort of has continued since this painting. So like you have this painting, Cornerstone, that's also in the Katona Museum show. There's a giant cowboy in the middle of the painting, which I don't have a detail of, but if you go, you'll see it. This is the largest painting I've made so far that's also in the show, called These Fragments Have Shored Against My Ruins. Those sort of portals that you see has to do with interruption, again, of a digital AI sort of thing. So like in the middle, let's see, I don't have a detail, but at the end of the tunnel, you have this, like a digital man. He's on a screen. He's sort of like an updated Big Brother, maybe. It's 86 by 180 inches. So it's like 15 feet. Ministry of Truth. We're getting closer, 2023. Okay. The Mirror World. There's a lot of mirrors in this painting. Let's see. So you have these figures who are, this is going back to Velázquez again, of course, and many other painters, but you have these figures who are looking in the mirror, and in the mirror, they're looking at us. So we only see the back of their heads, but in the mirror, you could see them looking at us. This is called the Land of Miracles. So you could see the details of this. There's that red figure there. On that side is like a Christ-like figure, but then he's sort of like, he has an easel, and there's like a painting on an easel in some ways. Okay, I'll go fast. Yeah.
Do you make references to like your own personal or like individual experiences, and then reference collective experiences and history and antiquity? But do you make like conscious choices to reference your own like personal life at all?
I do, yeah. I mean, I think in some ways, like they're all me anyway, right? Like they're like the multitudes of me in different costumes. Just like I was saying earlier, when you come into the studio and you feel like this, then you feel like that, then you think this way. And, you know, I like the idea of having opposing, holding these opposing ideas at the same time. And you know, I like the word like being a witness, right? Like I'm not, things that I put in here are not, like there's no agenda. It's just like, I always imagine if I was like an alien and I came from another planet and was on a mountain and I was looking down and just making observations of what humans do and making notes in some ways. I feel like that about it, you know? So I feel like on one hand, it's being a witness and making observations. On the other hand, of course, all these figures, I feel them within my own body in some ways, you know? So they're, this is called the fortune teller. So you see, like because it's a, I started to use these like geometric forms in the paintings. You could see there's all these different pyramids. There's a large pyramid, then there's a smaller pyramid. So this is something that's occurred in the past maybe 2 years or something. Subterranean realms, these are these smaller paintings that I made that were influenced, again, going back to Goya, another hero of mine, who comes back again and again. But I was trying to create these spaces that are sort of, I'm very much interested in the underworld. So these are like underworld spaces that, you know, underworld spaces. And this is called Still Life, which is, yeah, unusual for me to have these two central figures, but somehow I just wanted that. Here's a shot of my studio. Here's the references I was mentioning, like this, you know, one shot. I mean, as I said, it ends up being the same stuff somehow. Oh, just wanted to show some etchings. You know, I'm a huge fan of printmaking, so these are all etchings. This is a new lithograph, first time doing lithograph. Oh, and these are, yes, these are sculptures that I just, you know, finished 2 months ago, so it's like a new medium for me. This is the alchemist, this figure, because it's like surrendering to the elements in some ways. So he's transforming, slowly he's transforming into gold. This is Cyclops. This is Gilgamesh. This is Animus and Anima. They sort of like go together, and these are about like 5 feet, and they're all bronze. You could see the details. Sorry? Some of them do, yeah. Yeah. Some of them do, for sure.
Do any of the figures in the painting remain unknowable to you?
Oh, yeah. Well, they remain unknown, or maybe I know a little bit, like, you know, I know maybe 1/3 of what they are, but the other, you know, like, it's kind of like in Gilgamesh, you know, he's, you know, this Gilgamesh, he's like 2/3 human, 1/3 divine. So maybe you know the 2/3, but you don't know the 1/3 because it's not understandable, you know? So, oh, here's some installations of the show at Katona Museum that's up till end of June. If anyone wants to go see it, it's there. Yes, there's Alchemist with that painting behind it. Here's like some of my, basically making a small replica of, you know, my notebooks, my books and references in this vitrine, and certain books that, as you could see, they've been important to me. And here is a reunion of the two paintings I made here and the two sculptures I made just last month. So I think we could end it there, I guess. Yeah. 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 No, it takes too long. As I said, like I had to speak to it a lot to tell it what to do, and yeah, maybe I should try that someday. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When you discuss your approach, it sounds like a lot of it comes down to your ability to be really present and just submitting to what you receive, not really end in mind as you're doing things. Is that all like kind of your natural disposition growing up, or something that you adopted or learned along the way by maybe some influences out there?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. No, like the earlier works was definitely, I was not disciplined, you know, like I had to push my way, and you know, it's sort of, I always compare it to like a bad dancer, you know, you're stepping on the toes of the person you're dancing with. And I think over time I've learned to listen, to know when to do and when not to do. And even when you're not doing, you are doing, right? Because you know, there's been times where I come to the studio and all day I sit on a chair and I look and nothing happens. It's a bit frustrating. But then the next day you come in and you do everything, and everything. I remember I had this painting that was giving me a lot of trouble. And it was like, I think it was the second time I went to go get my vaccine, and I came home, it was like 10 in the morning. And I went to lay down, and I woke up the next day. Like I slept for 24 hours. But then I got up and I finished that painting that I thought was going to take me like 2 weeks, because I don't know, I got the rest I needed, and you know, there's something about time, you see. I think you have to align yourself with time sometimes. I know time doesn't exist and all, but it's a feeling, right? Like the word is gnosis, you know? Like you just, my 9-year-old, oh no, when she was like 6 or 7, I would be like, Lola, how do you know that? She would say gnosis. So, I mean, of course I taught her that, but one thing is gnosis, and the other, there was a word I read that I thought it was interesting. It was shoot, now I forget. Anyway, I'll come back to it. But yeah, it's just, you just know, you just have to trust that gnosis. You have to trust that knowing when to do, when not to do. I don't know. Yeah. Yes, there's a way to, actually, I think I was taught this in this school. It's called visual streaming. That you, I mean, it could be dreams, but it's like when you paint it for a long time and then you just lay down and you could still see the painting, and then you change things in your visual streaming, and you could do that, you know, and then go back to it, and yeah. Uh-huh. I do have a lot of I do have a lot of pigments I grind, but these ones I'm talking about is mostly like mixing several colors to get this right kind of darkish color, which I actually learned from Martha Erlbacher. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've learned over time that these particular colors open up worlds. If I do it a little different, nothing might come out of it, you know? Yeah.
Your work seems to be very impacted by the macro environment, like thinking like COVID, women like freedom. How have the last year or the last 2 years impacted your work moving forward?
Well, let's see. So the last, I think that, you know, the fortune teller, okay. I think that like it's the research thing that I do. So it's sort of I become interested in something because something is happening in our time, you know? There's this level of uncertainty, and I've been thinking a lot about how, you know, this idea that what is real, what is surreal, what is fact, what is fiction, this sort of, we're in a place where we don't know what is real anymore because there's so many different sources. You know, back in, I don't know, 20 years ago or something, you could see like a photo that proved this thing happened. You would see it in the news and you're like, oh, okay, must have happened, right? Now with deep fakes, with AI, with fake, you know, you just don't know what is real anymore. And I think that pushes us to a place where you just have to like trust your, going back to that gnosis thing, you know? You just have to like trust what feels right to you, even though a million different voices could be coming at you at the same time. And I'm a kind of person who I'm tuned into information. I like understanding things, but some of the information are so opposite, you know, and you just don't know, like, is it this way or that way? And you just have to kind of go within yourself. And that's why Fortune Teller, this painting, you know, it's sort of like maybe you trust the thing that you tell yourself that is the truth, and that's the only thing that you could go by, you know. So I think I'm always sort of things that are happening in our time always sends me down many rabbit holes, and then I get excited and I want to do something about it. But also, like, I'll see reoccurring, if something I see reoccurring, I'll know that it wants something from me, you know? Like if I keep seeing it, like I'll read about it, then someone will talk about it, you know? And then I'll become interested in it. Like, okay, this is something that wants something from me, you know? And I'm interested in it in general too, so then it sends me down rabbit holes, you know? Yeah. Any other questions? Oh. 1 hour, 8 minutes I talked.